Hey guys, I'm top music attorney, Miss Krystle, and as you know, I've been covering Tom MacDonald recently on the YouTube channel. Now, I was introduced to Tom, the fact that not only that he's an independent artist, but he's a very successful independent artist, and understanding that a huge premise of this YouTube channel is to support independent artists, to help independent artists to stay legally protected. We've been covering his music videos and the fact that he's very vocal about being independent and wanting to stay independent for basically, his whole career. Now, today, Tom dropped a video and he went and kind of spilled the tea. And he's talking about this issue that he's been having with, as he calls it, a data reporting company. Now, I think he's talking about what was previously called Nielsen Sound Exchange, which name was changed to MRC Data, and this is a company that reports to Billboard, so Billboard then knows how to rank on its various charts. Now, in the video, Tom did not specifically say the name of the company. Now, I'm thinking that that's because he probably does have an attorney and maybe was advised not to actually say the name. Given the extent of his platform, given that this video is very likely to go viral, the blowback that would happen, I think, from the fans kind of going after the company is obvious. And so I think, Tom seems to be very tactful and conscientious of the things that he says on his platform. So I think that's the reason why he didn't specifically drop the name of the company. But in any case, what I want to do in this video is basically break this into like two sections. In the first one, I'll give you a little summary of what he said. I'm about to go into an appointment, so I'm just going to see if I can get through all of this, but I'll give you a little summary of what he said in the video, but then I'll also give you from an attorney's perspective what I would advise Tom to do so that potentially he can get a remedy. All right, so just jumping right into it, Tom said he's working with Nova. Nova is his girlfriend as well as his creative collaborator, and so they were strategizing the release of the album. And he goes, I have never tried to report my album sales because, I just didn't until now with this current album that he just dropped, which is called Brave. And he said, looking at kind of the requirements, we had to register, and then there were a bunch of things that we had to do in order to comply with the requirements so that we could submit our information and then have it applied and hopefully rank on Billboard. Now, as his fans certainly know, but for those of you who aren't that familiar with Tom MacDonald, he releases his albums as still physical CDs. And you might say, well, why can I find his stuff if I search on Spotify? And the answer is because he releases the singles for his music videos that come out. So those will still be on the various music platforms. But when he drops his album, in his own words, he likes to and wants to cut out the music industry. He doesn't want to go through a music distributor. He doesn't want anyone taking a cut of his money. So it's a very direct relationship with his fans, who then will go and purchase his album. And he says he drops about 2 albums per year. So with this recent album, he goes about a month ahead of the drop. We're in communication with the data reporting company, and we're saying, hey, we want to make sure that we comply. And so they're asking for certain information. For example, we need to be able to go on the website, verify the website. And so Tom and Nova at this time are kind of communicating with this company to just try to get everything kind of situated. And given that it was a month in advance, they thought, well, we'll get this all done and we shouldn't run into any issues. Or so they thought. So I guess one of the initial problems that they started to run into is that because Tom and Nova self-distribute, right? So they print their own CDs, they send their own CDs, they do everything directly from artist to fan. There's no middlemen. And typical middlemen would be distributors, right? So the distributors who will ingest the music from artists and then they send it to all of the music platforms. And then also, let's say, music publishers. So there will be middle people and companies who will help in the distribution of music. But the way that Tom and Nova do it is that they're just sending everything directly themselves. But that's now creating a problem with kind of reporting the data of the album sales from Tom's Brave album, because now he can't kind of submit what is likely statements from the music distributor, right, to support what he is saying in the number of albums that he sold. And so in the video, Tom just goes, basically between 45 emails, which I so understand this, but between about 45 emails going back and forth, we're like, we'll give you literally whatever you want, we'll even give you access to our store so you can go in and verify yourself. Now, guys, giving an unknown person, regardless of what company they work for, access to your store is a big deal. So obviously Nova and Tom were getting really desperate and they were just trying to just do whatever they could. But I understand situations like this because what Tom is doing is so unique that obviously this company is not even set up to be able to ingest the data and to have a way that a fully independent artist can report his or her numbers to this company in order to chart on Billboard. And so in one of the emails, Tom showed that, he had said it just sounds like you guys aren't even really set up and that you don't even have a system in place for independent artist reporting. The company came back and said, oh no, yes we do. And so then Tom's like, all right, so, what does that look like? And they, this company wouldn't disclose the information. So what I'm taking from the email chain that Tom kind of disclosed in this video was that this company is set up to ingest certain data in a certain kind of way. And if you don't meet that criteria, then they basically just throw their hands up and say there's nothing that we can do for you. Obviously, over the course of the 45 emails, I think at some point Nova, she had been handling them primarily, and then Tom jumps in, and eventually things always seem to get a little hostile. And unfortunately, that's when communication that was already kind of shitty gets even worse with these companies, because as soon as you become a little more aggressive and you are asserting yourself and just saying, whatever, and then some of us, myself included, you might start throwing out the, I'm going to have to hire an attorney. I'm going to have to protect my rights because you are preventing me from being able to just report the data. And so, not to say that obviously, Tom did any of that. I think he read his email and he was eloquent in what he shared on just saying, no, I'm a legit artist. I'm getting like 30 million plays on videos, and someone else chimed in and said, yeah, he's gotten like 100 million views on YouTube in 2021 alone. Tom and Nova are sending pictures to the data collection company, just showing that they are actually doing order fulfillment themselves. And you can see that there's just thousands and thousands of packages that are going out to fans. So basically, that's just a little summary of what Tom explained in the video, and then his kind of call to action at the end of it was, well, we decided to still release the album on iTunes. I believe it's also on Amazon, but he just kind of directed the fans because he goes, we can at least chart on iTunes. Obviously, we can chart on billboards. And he did say, he goes, we have had songs chart on billboards because right now what he's trying to report are his physical album sales. And in this instance, it's really difficult because it just sounds like, he's fully independent. And so he doesn't have the statements from these third parties that we typically will distribute through, even as independent artists. And so this company is just saying, like, basically, we're not set up to be able to verify, and your numbers and sales are so extraordinary, you must be lying. So at this point, you might be asking, all right, so why do we care? What's the big deal? Well, being able to say you had a #1 album on any Billboard chart is something that's really important because, Billboard is the most acclaimed music chart out there. And what having a #1 album could do for Tom's career is something that we're going to talk about in the next section, but this just brought to mind a couple of instances that happened in recent years where other artists were really taking issue with Billboard. So one was Tekashi 6ix9ine. And he had a couple of releases that he had done. He did the music videos out of his home, and just the virality of those videos was out of control. And I remember him doing a few posts on social media because he got really upset, and he was coming for Ariana Grande for that #1 spot on Billboard. And he just goes, basically her label is cheating. They're going and purchasing albums to kind of, inflate sales and look at my numbers. Now, Billboard ended up releasing an article, making some statements after that, right? So just disclaiming what Tekashi 6ix9ine had claimed. But also back in 2013, Nicki Minaj and Mariah Carey had that famous fight on American Idol where they're kind of duking it out about that #1 spot on Billboard. And so we hear this a lot from even the artists who are on major labels and just saying that, the major labels are, messing with the numbers, they're inflating stuff artificially. And I'm not sure that they're wrong. But in this case, we're going back to, well, can an independent artist even be able to compete? Tom and Nova in this instance, because they're so unique, even from the category of independent artists who, quite frankly, still distribute, right? Most independent artists might not have that big of a fan base that will go and actually purchase, let's say, CDs, because, who has a CD player? So the fact that you can still move tens of thousands of CDs definitely says something about where you're at as an artist. the loyalty of your fan base. But even with independent artists who are still trying to kind of play the game so that they can use their sales to actually chart on Billboard, I mean, that's one kind of topic. We're talking now about Tom, who's doing direct-to-consumer CD sales, and in this case, just simply wanting to have his data accurately ingested and reported so that he has an opportunity to chart. So moving into the next section, what should Tom do? If Tom called my office and he said, Krystle, I'm hiring you, I need your thoughts on how we should proceed, and should I just roll over and take this? What we would discuss is calling for public support. And when you have such a large fan base, you can utilize this for a number of ways. One might be, for example, which Tom has done, which is to say, I don't know what's going to happen in this situation, but what you can do, fans, is to go and support me by purchasing the album on iTunes. And then, of course, his fans can actually go and support him in that way. But then another piece of this is tactically to apply pressure. And we saw, for example, Rick Beato. He's a very big YouTuber. He's an educator, really cool guy. And he had put out a video because he had received copyright strikes, because it's a big portion of what he does on his channel is to react to popular legacy songs, right? And he'll kind of break them down in an educational format, which again is allowable. But because of, some automated things on YouTube and record labels just filing copyright strikes, he was at risk of having his entire channel with millions of subscribers deleted. And so what he did is that he released a video just kind of airing it out and saying, this is what I've done to try to handle it, but I'm not the guy who wants to go into the mud and kind of duke this out, so I'm just frustrated, I'm just sharing. And from sharing, well, word got around and people started to make calls on his behalf, and then, he was able to get the applicable labels and companies to withdraw those claims, and then he got permissions. And so sometimes just simply airing it out online, as long as you're being truthful, right? We don't want you to, open yourself up to potential defamation claims because you're talking shit about some company. Again, possibly why Tom didn't, name the actual company by name in his video. But that you can just mobilize your audience to do something and to try to help you. So number one, kind of calling for public support. Number two, hire an attorney. So every attorney is different, but obviously in this scenario, I'm the attorney, and so what I would consult Tom to do is to fire off an initial demand letter, right? So we kind of reserve the nuclear option, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but the first kind of swing at it is we send a demand letter. We say, hey, here's everything that we tried. We went through your system, we communicated with your representatives, and because there's been zero forward movement, we've now been forced to, or our client has been forced to retain legal counsel, and so basically we need assistance, and we need you to respond to this within like the next week or two. And guys, I will say that 99% of the time when clients will retain our office to simply try to get better communication and to get better problem resolution on some situation, it's very effective. As soon as an attorney is involved, you better believe that people seem to work a little bit harder, pay more attention to what's going on, and to get meaningful eyes and support. But there's always going to be teeth in that demand letter. And so you say, well, if you fail to respond by this time, or we can't actually get this resolved, and basically you guys will prevent our client from being able to have his data reported to Billboard, then X, Y, and Z is going to happen. And that X, Y, Z is typically we're going to file a lawsuit. And so the lawsuit is what I call the nuclear option. Lawsuits are very expensive, but they can be very effective. Because at some point, I would argue that this company is willfully preventing Tom from having his information reported, and therefore he's not being able to, for example, be a #1 album on Billboard, which is causing damages. Damages is the basis of the lawsuit. We're suing for damages because not only would Tom be entitled to reimbursement of all attorney's fees incurred to date, including those related to the lawsuit and demand letter, but he has damages that would have to be quantified. But for example, one is loss of reputation, right? So we could even make the argument that Tom looks like a liar, right? So he sold all of these albums and he did so well as an independent artist, but he wasn't able to get on Billboard. So then that gives a perception that maybe he's a liar. Now, do his fans really think that? Maybe not, but it doesn't mean that it's not an argument. Loss of business opportunity, right? So being an artist, an independent artist that has achieved a #1 album on Billboards, and let's even say that it stayed there for a number of weeks, that little piece, that little line item that can go on his resume moving forward gives him a lot of negotiation power when he goes to do deals in any kind of sense within the music industry. And the list kind of goes on. So when you file a lawsuit, you kind of throw everything in the kitchen sink and you say, here are all the claims that we have, and you pursue them until you are able to either come to a resolution or you'll get a judgment from the court. But like I said, you know, if Tom and Nova aren't able to kind of get this resolved informally, and this company is not stepping up, right, to say, well, we don't really have a system in place to be able to help with an artist like you, but we're gonna make it happen, right? Well, then now you need to get a little more aggressive. The next step is to hire an attorney, send a demand letter. And if they ignore the demand letter or they don't comply to come up with a meaningful resolution, then you have the option to file a lawsuit. And all of this, by the way, is a real opportunity for Tom to really change something that is already set in this industry. And I think because he has such a huge platform, he has a real opportunity to do just that. I'm gonna give you one last little story. So compared to this girl, this athlete, this little prodigy athlete, soccer player, I think at the time she was like 15, and she was at this place where she was so good that she wanted to be able to compete on the women's international, you know, soccer team. And they wouldn't let her even audition, right? And so they ended up filing lawsuits, and they were claiming things kind of like what I'm talking about, right? So that even though the requirements might say you're not allowed to for X, Y, and Z, it doesn't mean that it's right. And maybe you have someone who doesn't fit within kind of this mold of what you've built as a private company. And so in the instance of the soccer player, you know, she goes, I just want the opportunity to audition. If I kick everyone's ass and I do good, I should be able to be on the team. And so through a very long kind of litigation process, she ended up winning, and she got a spot on that team. So in any case, I'm doing this video because I support what Tom is kind of doing. I definitely feel for him, and I think that there's a solution through all of this. So guys, make sure that you share this video with Tom and Nova. I hope that they've already gotten an attorney and that they're kind of pursuing some of the steps that I talked about in this video. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe, turn on those bell notifications so you don't miss any videos from your new favorite redhead. I'm Miss Krystle. Bye guys.